Hey, welcome back to the BVB podcast. My name's Jacob, joined as always by Carver. How's it going, man? Not as maybe a Dortmund fan. How are you doing in general? How's life?
Oh, Jacob.
Oh,
I'm wearing a sweatshirt that says, "You don't mind if I have a good week?" Because despite Dortmund's best efforts to keep all of us down, I am in good spirits at the moment. How are you? Trying my best.
what are you drinking, by the way? What is
This
that?
is just pineapple juice. I was just doing
Okay.
it for the comedic effect.
No, I liked it. I'm like, oh man, I thought you said you had a haircut to go to, but you're just gonna get a little buzzed on the way there.
Yeah.
No, I'm doing okay. Outside of being a Dortmund fan, I'm doing all right. It's super cold in St. Louis today. I'm going to Florida tomorrow, so I can't complain too much. Just get through the day and then be on my way. Yeah, pretty good. Outside of this, I feel like our worst thoughts are like coming to fruition.
Yeah.
Right now, like we've been told before as Dortmund fans, like, calm down. You're still Dortmund. It's fine. And we're like, no, things just keep getting worse and worse and worse. Not to be dramatic, but it's like things are collapsing all around us. Obviously, we're gonna be talking about the last two matches, the loss to Holstein Kiel and Frankfurt. And I guess all the rest of the podcast will be all the chaos surrounding that and the news that's been coming out of this with Şahin, with possibility of Erik Ten Hag, with the lack of transfer news or the Rashford. I don't know. We put out ask for questions in our Discord too. So here's the Discord plug. If you're not already involved in that community, make sure you join with the link in the episode notes here and join our Discord. But we're going to run through some of those questions. But I mean, let's start. We're probably not going to go really deep dive on each match individually because who would want to do that? So I guess Carver, where do you want to start? Do you want to start with lineups? Do you want to do the normal lineup thing or just?
I don't know. I'm caught between not wanting to talk about these games at all, but also really needing to shed some light on just how shambolic this club is at the moment. I mean, yeah, there are some people that I guess can be a little bit dramatic, saying like this club is destined to just continue this trajectory going downwards, and people are like throwing the word relegation around here and there. I don't think it's anything as serious as that. And despite the club saying like the top four is the minimum, that's what we're aiming for with Şahin, top four. Now that's looking like quite a challenge, and that might not even actually happen. And remember, we finished last season in fifth, so this is going to be the second year in a row that would actually happen. And the only reason we qualified for Champions League in the begin with is because the German point accumulation to actually help clubs like not necessarily Dortmund, but other, German clubs to get them a bit more revenue and just a spot in Europe. If that doesn't happen, it looks like the club can survive another year with some other sales, of course, in the Club World Cup for some extra funds to, to keep the ship afloat in terms of just kind of the status that we're in at the moment. But yeah, the standards are continuing to slip at this club in terms of just the quality on the pitch. The board at this point and the coaching staff is basically just a men's club. I was going to save it for later, but like we need to fund a men's club for Kiel, Şahin, Vatska, Samar, Ricken, all of those men that they could just sit together in a little room, smoke cigars, have their whiskey, and just enjoy a private men's club so they don't actually have to actively destroy this club while still sticking together like the old band that they were. Because this club is just ran on strictly nepotism at this point, and you're seeing the points and just the overall quality of the club suffer because of that. Lineup, though, you mentioned, right?
Yeah, I was going to try to bring it back to the match, which I mean, it is such a good point, and like I think what we've seen the last couple of years, like it's so clear. Like I know we've kind of hit on this kind of stuff the last few years, especially with the point with Şahin and. Although we had hopes at the beginning, right now we're seeing it collapse. And it's very clear, I think, why, like just the lack of experience, which we all said before. And that's why we appreciated, like he came in as an assistant. It's like, cool, man, give him maybe 10 more years in his assistant, let him go coach somewhere else, let him coach the academy, let him coach the under 23s. I don't know. Like he needs some actual coaching experience. And it's
even
just,
Sven Bender was in the coaching staff, and of course he had a short stint at whatever club that was in the third division for Germany, and he was an assistant coach for there, and then had like a month and a half, 2 months spell there. But I mean, at least even he is trying to get some experience. Not the greatest, but he's unlike Şahin. I get though Şahin, if you get an opportunity like this, Dortmund's only going to call once, and it's an opportunity of a lifetime. So I understand him trying to take that opportunity. But yeah, a lot of people thought at the beginning this is not the answer, and clearly the vast majority of people are understanding now that that is the case. Şahin is not the only problem, but he certainly is a start.
Yeah, and it feels very much like with the Xabi Alonso story and Leverkusen, and even though he wasn't a Leverkusen player, but it seems like this young coach who came in and just really implemented his style and really, I mean, we all know what he did with Leverkusen, right? And then forgetting the Brighton manager Hertzler, who's now at Brighton, what he did with St. Pally, like just these young coaches that are able to kind of hit the ground running. And it seems very much like that's what they wanted. They wanted to do it with one of their own. And it's just like all falling apart now. And they all look dumb. And it's being very out in the public now. It's very revealed. Like we're even seeing all these mixed like messages from different reporters, from different members of that group that are all kind of saying different things about Şahin and his status and what's going on. And we'll touch on that, but I am going to loop it back to let's get in the lineup and about Holstein Kiel. I do want to hit the lineup because I think that's such a good place to start with this match. We don't need to get into all the details about the match, but starting with Kobel in goal, obviously, surprisingly, we did have a lot of recoveries from sickness, a way stronger lineup than what I was expecting going into this match, especially with the reports coming right out of the previous match. But Benzabaini at left back, Schlotterbeck center back along with Chan, and then Rierson on the right, Mecha that holding mid position. Then across the midfield, we also had Gittens out wide, Durnville on the right side, Brandt and Sabitzer in the middle, and then Girassi up top.
Yeah, like you mentioned, much stronger of a lineup against Kiel as opposed to Leverkusen. We're not sure how many of those players were actually at 100% fitness or even just health, given the rampant flu that went through the team the past week or so. But either way, I mean, you saw such an unbelievably poor performance collectively from this team. A lot of people are saying it's the worst performance they've seen from Dortmund in recent memory, talking last 10, 15 years. I don't think there's much of an argument there. I mean, you saw from top to bottom, this team just completely careless, lethargic with their losses of possession, with their efforts in transition, a lot of times from Brandt, but it's not exclusive to him by any means. It was so sloppy. It was so uninspiring. And you would expect after this Leverkusen game, again, bad loss at home, right? But a lot of players were not on the senior team and they gave it their all. Of course, it wasn't great, but for the most part, a lot of those players did fight. And you're looking for us to take from what little positives we had from that game and to go to get some fucking 3 points on the road against an opposition that was tied for last in the Bundesliga. This was, again, like I said last week, the best opportunity for us to get 3 points on the road this season. There are a lot of people that we were thinking going to be missing. A lot of them did end up coming back, and it was all the more disappointing whenever we went down a few goals pretty early on against arguably the worst side in the Bundesliga. It's appalling.
Yeah, and I think this match is we started the new year, the second half of the season with losing 3 straight. And I think this one is definitely the outlier, right? Like Leverkusen, yes, it's at home, but it's Leverkusen who've been on a hot streak. They ended 2024 really well. And like you said, we're playing a lot of kids, a lot of inexperience due to the illness going around the club. So it's like, okay, cool. I did see that one. I didn't have a lot of hope going into that one, and we lost that one. Fast forward to Frankfurt. Frankfurt's a good team. We're away. We've been terrible on the road. We lose there. Okay, like I can accept that, knowing how, not that I want us to lose or like that's my overall expectations for the club, but like knowing how we've been this year, it's like, cool. Yeah, we're going to lose that one too. Holstein Kiel, as you mentioned, very much a team we should be beating, especially on the road. Like on the road, doesn't matter. Like we need to be beating them. Looking at this lineup and how, like, I guess the team performance and the lack of care, like, were these guys ready? Would we have been safer just like letting the kids play again? Like, and who knows what's up with their health and fitness either, but I kind of have that question mark. Like, were these guys even ready? Şahin throwing them in just because like they are available, even if they're not quite ready. Like, I don't know. I have so many questions for our medical staff anyways, but I don't think you put that in there necessarily. But like, could we have been better off just playing the kids in this one?
Yeah, ready or not going forward, I would argue 90% of this team needs to be under scrutiny and under extreme, concern if they're even going to get minutes going forward. I mean, players like Brandt has been so incredibly disappointing this season. You and I both have been writing him since the beginning of this show. And even back then, he was in a similar form, right? Where he was a shell of himself. at Leverkusen. He really turned around things these past few years, but now he's slipping into that exact same, those very, very poor habits of his, shying away from any sort of physicality on the pitch. His passes don't have any sort of weight or precision on them. Again, they're so careless. The first goal, whenever we conceded against Kiel, he lost the ball pretty poorly and just jogged, if not walked back in transition to get the possession back. And Kiel scores. It was the par for the course for pretty much the entire game. And just the collective play, again, was fundamentally flawed. And Reyna needs to be starting over Brandt, in my opinion, going forward at the moment, because Reyna thrives on that pressure. He invites it. He waits for people to, metaphorically and literally on the field, he's waiting for people to come to him in those moments whenever we're getting into the final third, and then he's picking out a pass. It's very simplistic looking, but he makes it look very, very easy, and he's very effective at it. Of course, right in these last 2 games, he didn't get a lot of minutes, but, you didn't see too much from him, but it's still much, much better than than Brandt at the moment, with just his performances on and off the ball. It's completely unacceptable, but it's not exclusive to him either. I mean, you can keep going down the list. Girassi, we'll talk about him a bit more for this game against Frankfurt, but yeah, also very disappointing in Keil as well.
Yeah, and on the note of, I guess, Reyna should be starting in Frankfurt, and I think you can say that in so many positions, and it's a point I've come back to time and time again, is having that competition for positions and it just being non-existent in this club, even if it's, I guess, positions where we do have some competition, like Reyna. And then the argument is, I guess, people doubting Reyna, if he cares or if he puts in enough effort. I think Reyna is a player who would desperately want to play. And I don't think, we've talked before about the development. Maybe that's something we can talk about later on too. But I think we've failed as a club to even develop him to get him to where he should be right now, maybe pushing even more. But if Şahin's just looking at I have to start Brandt because of whatever, because he's the guy I have to start, or Sabitzer, or I don't know, or Girassi every time instead of Bayer. And I know Bayer's been out on the wing. The only player we've kind of seen get dropped really is Malen, and maybe the reason was because he clearly wanted out and he clearly wanted to leave. But I don't know everything going on behind the scenes, but I think it just, part of it does come back to this competition. And if guys are just being rewarded with starting 11 spots because, one, they're the only player available, or because favoritism, which apparently runs pretty deep in this club, we have so many issues because of that.
The competition is definitely one of the major issues too. I mean, you look at so many other clubs that are above us in the table, and you just look at their attacking front line, or really, any sort of line in the team. In particular, if we're just strictly talking about attackers here, but you look at the likes of, Bayern doesn't really have another number 9 at the moment, but Leverkusen's got options up front. Frankfurt, I know they just lost Marmoush, but if you look at Stuttgart too, they have a handful of attacking players that have been producing all year. Demirovic has been a little bit disappointing, sure, but you still have the likes of Undov. One of their younger players, Valdemar, too, 6'5", 7-goal contributions this season. There's a lot of clubs in this division that have a lot of competition in that front line. And you look at the likes of Dortmund, it's just Girassi for that number 9 spot. And, like you said, rewarding him with more starts when he scored 7 goals, but he's really, really dipping a lot. And his attitude is so stinky. It rakes, and I'm getting ahead of myself here because that Frankfurt game was so frustrating to watch for Girassi, but really everyone too. And this Kiel game was no different. And then when Dortmund are unable to provide any sort of ball circulation or chance creation, and against a team, Kiel wasn't even really sitting back, but other teams that do sit back, you slowly start to solely rely on JG out wide for those one-on-one situations. That can be absolutely effective, as we've talked about plenty of times before, but in these last 2 games, you really saw Jamie start to be a bit more selfish on the ball. He's not picking his head up whenever other players are in better positions than him when we're getting into the final third or even into the box. And you're overly reliant on how old is Gittens, 21-year-old, inshallah, to have some sort of step over and get a goal like Sancho we did a few years back. And, it's pretty one-dimensional, and it's very easy for teams to figure out quickly. And that's why you're seeing this team really struggle to produce any sort of chance creation, score goals, or keep a clean sheet by any means, too. We fucking conceded 4 goals at Kiel, which is just, again, it's unacceptable.
Yeah, on the Gittens note, I agree. I think he, part of, I understand him, I guess, just trying to take things on and create on his own. Because I mean, the first half of the season, that's what he was doing. That's how we were staying in games. That's how we were winning games. He was very much winning games on his own. And I even think outside of that, I'll admit too, like I'm not the most tactically astute soccer fan. Like it's hard for me to grasp some tactics that are happening, but I feel like it is utter chaos on the pitch. Like I feel like no one knows what they're doing. A lot of the times it is get the ball to Gittens and he's just going to run. And like I said, it did work early on. I think a lot of teams weren't quite ready for what he was going to be able to produce. And now they're catching on. And now it's like we've seen him be successful in 1-on-2s in those situations, still be able to get a goal. But like, if that is the plan, if the ball is to let Gittens do whatever, like it doesn't seem like anything else. Like I don't see runs happening. I don't see guys just creating or working together. Like they're not flowing as a team at all. And that's where you're seeing all these like frustrating individual moments now with Gittens. Seen it so much with Gearsey. God, it pisses me off so much. It's so frustrating. If we fast forward to Frankfurt, like he's scored goals. Now a lot of them have been PKs. A lot of those like PKs too have been kind of questionable. Like there was definitely a recent one where it's definitely a flop or a dive and they gave the PK, so he didn't get the yellow card. It's just been, and looking at I'm shifting around quite a bit and I apologize, but looking to the midfield too, like that is a position or an area where I do think we have the possibility for some good rotation and good competition, but we're not getting much out of any of these guys either. Like I still argue like Mech has probably been the best and the most consistent, and I see him making an effort, but then there's just like we can't connect. Like I think the best opportunities through the midfield is when Mecha gets the ball and just kind of runs with it and does his long strides and is able to run past people. But outside of that, like I don't see us linking up play. I don't see us connecting out wide or back through the middle. I just don't see like anything happening with this team.
Yeah, the midfield is probably arguably the biggest place with the most depth in this team. And even then, you're still struggling to find any sort of consistent pairing or even trio in that midfield because everyone is underperforming. I mean, even for someone that's Mecha, that's been probably our best midfielder all season, he was very underwhelming in these last two games. Taken off early against Frankfurt. Gross has been suspended as well, but again, he's aging. Sabitzer, I have no idea what's going on with him this season. But when you look at all of them at an individual basis, of course, players are going to have slumps, but collectively, all of these players are underperforming. All of them, you can see how frustrated they are when they're playing. You see it on their faces. And a lot of that comes down to coaching. They're lost in transition. They're lost whenever they have the ball. They can't, again, provide any good circulation of possession. So there's no flowing or anything like that. The last two things I just wanted to say for this game, and both of them are just kind of post-game here, but Şahin had a comment saying, like, it's shameful how we performed here. This is unworthy of a club like Borussia Dortmund from the first to the last minute, and there's nothing more to say about it. And I think that's really, I mean, for all of his flaws, he pretty much wrapped it up perfectly here. And as painful as it is, I just want to preface as like listening to Ale Moreno on ESPN, especially in those post-game comments. Everyone, I think, listening to this show, especially a lot of other Dortmund fans, know how annoying he is. He was extremely correct in his post-game comments for, I can't remember if it was the Frankfurt or the Kiel game, and just talking about focusing on what is in front of you right now. Like, stop thinking of the bigger picture as a club, even though the problem is a lot bigger than just what you're seeing on the field. You just need to win some fucking games. Like, look at the opponent in front of you, focus on what is in front of you only, and beat the opponents that you should be beating. Think of the micro instead of the macro. These teams that are in zones, bottom of the league, mid-table, now we're there. These are teams that you need to get points against, especially on the road when you're struggling already so much this season. And the fact that, players are having all these different excuses every games, and they're saying, oh, this is not acceptable, we need to do better, blah, blah, blah. And then they're looking past the opponent in front of them, and then they're failing to do the same thing again. And it's just the same problems over and over and over. You're seeing the mentality dip. You're seeing the inexperienced coaches. Again, the board, it just needs to be a lot more focused in and just look at the opponent in front of you, because there's no reason we should have lost to this Kiel side for sure.
It's funny you mentioned just Ale Moreno and good things to say or stuff that you agreed with, because although, yeah, he is a pundit that annoys me quite often. I think it was after the Frankfurt game, there was other comments and things that he said. I was like, man, I can't believe I'm agreeing with this guy right now. And I think his comparison after Frankfurt was just more the actual comparison of Dortmund as a club and the history versus Frankfurt. Obviously, Frankfurt is a huge city, but club wise, they're not on the same, like you don't put them on the same scale as Dortmund, but how they're kind of structured and how they've been operating, a little more backroom stuff, and just how they, I guess, big picture plan and future plan and all that. And I mean, the big example was Omar Mamouche in this game, who is off to Man City, did not play in this game. It was kind of interesting seeing that he was actually at the stadium and he came out onto the pitch afterwards. But like, they have a plan in place for that, right? Like he's leaving, and what did they do? Maybe it's not, they still have Ekatike, but I know they've been playing with kind of the 2-striker thing, and their answer for No Marmouche was put Knauf up top, which was kind of so interesting to see, as a former Dortmund winger who we sold, cast aside. I know he's played a lot of different roles for that team too. He's played kind of that dual 10. He's played a wing back, and yeah, he plays up top in this game too. And as a Frankfurt, what a Frankfurt fan might say is like, no complaints there. They got the job done against Dortmund. That might not be their plan moving forward, but they knew what to do in this moment without Marmouche. And I think that's what I'm trying to get at, is like, there's just like a plan and a purpose that we're seeing elsewhere at other clubs, and we're seeing them operate correctly. And there's like no side of that at all in Dortmund.
Yeah, Frankfurt have done a lot of things right the last year or so. You know, they've done some smart business, and this is not the only team this year that has not played their best player and got a result against us. I mean, this is a Frankfurt side without Marmouche, who didn't even play that well collectively without him either, and still got a win against Dortmund. And I can't think of many others off the top of my head, but I know there was a bunch. I mean, Leverkusen played without Wirtz too, and they beat us. I know we beat Leipzig, but they didn't have Xavi Simons at the time. You know, there's a handful of other games this season where we did lose, and the opposition did not have one or two of their best players, and they're still not even putting on a great collective performance and still getting a result, if not a win, versus Dortmund. So, you know, you're seeing just how poor this team is performing against sides that they should not only be beating, but teams that are, you know, not even 100% at the moment. It's really disappointing. And you know, this game is no different. Lots of possession here from Dortmund, but little to no real ideas going forward against a compact side. More shaky build up from Kobel here, I noticed early on too. I mean, just even that first minute and a half, almost giving up a goal again in the exact same way, of just needing to clear your lines, not overcomplicate things. But we're inviting on pressure. We're putting ourselves in an unnecessary position to go down early, and it absolutely should have been 1-0 early on again, and the same exact, you know, problem that we've seen before for this club. It's annoying.
Yeah, and I will run through the lineup real quick. Kobel in goal. Obviously, you had Benzabaini left back again. Schlotterbeck and Anton are two center backs, with Rierson on the right. Chan holding mid, although we did see quite a bit him dropping deep, as he does if he's playing that CDM role and kind of going to a back three. And we had Gittens, Mecha, Gross, and Brandt across the midfield, and Girassi again up top.
I don't have too much to say about this game that I haven't already said. The Girassi, man. So
let's talk about that moment. And I do,
so frustrating.
I did just watch that video before we were recording, and it's insane. And specifically because he's been getting a lot of these, or like getting penalties, and then there's been so many times where maybe we don't get a penalty shout, and that is the complaint after the match from Keil or Şahin or
on the
Chan
sidelines. Keil got a card that game too for the same moment.
Keil got a. Did you say Keil or Şahin?
Yeah,
Keil.
Keil.
Okay, yeah. It's like, yeah, he got a card.
Even though they could see, like, they have those iPads out there. I'm imagining they're getting replays of those angles, you know. So you're like, you know what Girassi was doing there. And not only did he dive when he know he was not going to get to the ball, but just like the tantrum after too. Like, bro, you are a grown ass man in a professional setting. What is he? 6'4", clearly a physical player, clearly a hold up target man, clearly someone who scored an enormous amount of goals last season for Stuttgart in those same positions. But now he's just like this whiny shell of himself at the moment. And it's like, pick yourself up, man. This is embarrassing.
It does come from this sense of like, we don't know what we're doing, right? So he's just trying to win the game. And as of late, he's been trying to win or get points, or like by getting penalties. And I'd also argue that he wasn't that far from the ball. When the dude grabbed his arm, like, I think there's a chance he could have got a touch to it.
I don't know, man.
Before the keeper got the ball. If he would have just ran, if you just run, don't let yourself get pulled back, you might have been able to get to it. Or get there close enough to where you have some collision with the keeper, and maybe that's your PK. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's so frustrating because one, the tantrum is insane. Then later he gets, I don't remember if it was before or after, he gets a yellow card. That one was after because I think they argued if it was a dive, that should have been his second yellow because he previously got a yellow for complaining when Jamie Gittens ran into him and he thought that was a PK.
Yeah.
I understand.
Zero self-awareness.
He didn't realize it was Gittens that hit him, but he could have figured out pretty quickly if he would have just turned around. And then he's yelling and complaining and gets a yellow card for that.
And entitled that he just thought he should automatically be getting something like that. And he's complaining when he's not getting the ball. Like I mentioned before, like JG does need to pick his head up, and a player of that age that's still finding himself a bit more and trying to take himself to that next level here. He's going to need to work some kinks out in his game. He's going to need to be a bit more smarter on the ball and a little bit selfless too, even though, we are, again, overly reliant on players like him for his individual quality. But if he picks his head up in those moments, Guirassy was open in that one moment. But when Guirassy does get that moment, he has a heavy touch, he dives, and he throws a tantrum, which just, it's so frustrating. And it's annoying.
And we shouldn't then be complaining that this is why we deserve points or we deserve to win or a draw because we didn't get a PK. Like, that is so insane. We shouldn't need to rely on those moments. We should be outperforming these clubs. And I think the frustration that you're seeing from him, and one, the lack of the PK calls or whatever, the dives and all that crap, and then the frustration with him not getting the ball from Gittens is just this lack of cohesion with the team. It all kind of is just festering, and like there's no plan. Everyone wants to do it, and everyone deserves it. They should be the one to get the ball and score and whatever. And Gittens, to his credit, like did so much early on in the season, as I already said, that like I don't blame him for just trying to trying to do that and create these moments. But that shouldn't be the plan. Like you gotta work together, and it's insane.
It shows a lack of leadership and discipline, in my opinion. Of course, I am nowhere near the position that he is in, but if I were the coach in those positions, even against Kiel, and we're down 2-0, 20, 25 minutes in, and I'm seeing the likes of Brandt be that lethargic, that careless, players around him, same way, I'm making changes. I want players in there that are actually going to give their all to play for the badge, for themselves, for a sense of pride, for the supporters that came to this game. Hell, after the Kiel game, we didn't even mention that. The ultras coming down and talking to some of those players. Brandt didn't even come and show his face in that moment. You saw Schlotterbeck, Chan, and Anton, I think it was. Those three having a little bit of sort of self-responsibility there, but they didn't take any of that to the next game. It's just all pissed away. Whether they actually took any of that seriously into heart, maybe, but you didn't see any of that actually come into fruition or action into this next game. So if I'm the coach and I'm seeing that happen again, I'm not standing for it. I'm making changes early on. And I want players to go in there that are actually going to give a shit about what they're doing. Maybe they're not going to be as tactically competent but I don't really see any tactics to begin with. So I'm wanting players in there that are actually going to have a go at this team and try to scrape a result out of this rather than just kind of laying down and let it happen and pissing and moaning.
I mean, you said it right there. You're like, if I were the coach, I wouldn't let this happen. Unfortunately, you're not the coach. Our coach is Nuri Şahin, and I don't think he really is taking control of anything.
Yeah, I wouldn't have an answer for a lot of the other bigger problems at the club, but just right then and there on the field, I'm making changes. That's step one.
Let's shift into Nuri Şahin. And as I said, we have quite a few questions and comments in our Discord. I'm just going to try to sprinkle these in as we have this conversation because I think they're going to fit throughout instead of just hitting them one by one because I think we're going to hit on this stuff anyways. I mean, the big talking point coming out of this match and losing the last three and just how things have been going, things are crumbling, obviously. We're hearing mixed reports from multiple members on the board on his security. I guess Sebastian Keil isn't technically on the board, but from Dortmund higher ups, we're kind of hearing different things here and there. But the big discussion coming out of this match, which us fans have been talking about for a while, like, is his job safe? What is going to happen? And now after these last two results, it's like, is he on the chopping block? Yes or no? And the reports we're seeing is that he will be on the bench for Bologna. Whether that's
a bunch of baloney. We're deleting the show right after this. Sorry, guys.
Is he just kind of a placeholder for his whoever's coming in next? Is he just sitting there because they haven't got a coach yet? Or what you're also seeing is he needs a win against Bologna to secure his spot in his position. I don't think I've seen it clearly that if he loses, he's out, but I've seen if he wins, he's averting dismissal. And if we're already at this point, my big question is, why not just let it happen? Just
I
rip the Band-Aid off.
I really don't know at this point what the standard needs to be for us to actually cut the cord here. I genuinely, I don't understand, because we saw for the first like 2.5, 3 months of this season, whenever the results were really starting to slip, top four is the minimum. Top four is the minimum. Champions League. Lars Ricken in that interview lately he's completely unambitious, saying like, well, we want to be a staple in the Champions League going forward, and not having any sort of mention of actually winning the title. But still, Şahin is not, again, he's not the problem, but he certainly is a start here. And it's January now, it's mid-January, and the tactics are so unrecognizable. They're so anonymous. If there was an idea there that like, oh, I can understand it and it's not working, that's another story. But there's nothing that I'm really recognizing at the moment. And as we continue to fall deeper and deeper into the table, and top four is a question at this point. Pokal is out of the question. We're losing to the worst sides in the division. I don't know where that line is, where the buddies of Şahin are actually going to make a move here, because I think if they're going to point any responsibility to Şahin, they certainly need to be pointing some responsibility at themselves too, right? Like I don't know all the inner workings of what their day-to-day operations look like for those individuals, but I mean, like the squad planning, you mentioned that, like who is scouting for this team at the moment? You have like Sven Mislintat. I don't know who exactly he's been appointed since or even looked at since he's been back at the club, but we're still having like the same philosophy that has been really underwhelming in this club for like the last year and a half, 2 years, really. There needs to be more competition. There needs to be more younger, dynamic players you don't need to spend a lot. Like Leverkusen, they're not buying these huge stars that are costing them loads and loads of more money, that are breaking our transfer fees. Like look at like who these other teams are buying that, are finding these really good gems that Dortmund used to have. They used to be proactive in the market. They used to have their business done early. They used to have players that can actually prove themselves pretty early on for a fraction of the price of what we're looking at now for these players. Like the likes of Chelsea, these two players that we're looking at that are 25, 20, whatever the figure is. It's like, who's that center back for Bournemouth? Husin, how you pronounce it? 19 years old, one of the best center halves in the league. Bournemouth got them for like 15 or 16 million. Dortmund used to have a lot of those kind of signings, but I'm just not seeing those at the moment. So the squad planning, the coaching staff, the board, this is completely speculatory, but I'm imagining Vatska still calling a lot of the shots too, even though he is, taking that step back, quote unquote. It's all very shady at the moment. It's all, I don't see any sort of vision. We're going to continue this trajectory downward if we're not seeing any sort of move soon for not only Şahin, but just other people around that board as well.
Yeah, Nadby Collins, Frankfurt, starting center back / right back, who was a former Dortmund player too. Is
another player that I think we could have absolutely kept and used. I've been saying for a while now. Knauf too is another player I think we really botched. We've been looking for a right midfielder since, with a similar profile. I mean, he's got defensive efforts. I could go on about Knauf, but like, there's so many players like him. I mentioned him the other week too. There's other players that we kind of messed up on as well. Rota, that we need to have players incorporated into our senior team more. Because clearly they can actually prove at this level. I mean, I'm not saying Collins is like a world beater and like that, or Knauf's a world beater, but I mean, they certainly produce moments. Knauf had moments even at our senior level, and can clearly help this team plenty of times this season alone.
Yeah. And I mean, on this topic, we did have a question from Nick in our Discord, who said, I want to talk Erik ten Hag in a second, but before that, because I think this is the big question mark, is will changing the coaches make that big of a difference given the management structure and people that we currently have? I know it's a tough question to answer, but everything you hit on, like so much more needs to change than the coach. And do you think if we bring anyone in, will that help enough with, I guess, this season? Like if we bring someone in now, will that be enough to even reach top four as a goal?
If the appointment is actually a good hire, I think yes. Will it help enough for this season? I think yes. It depends. Are we going to have a coach who can actually get results against these relegation sides, against these mid-table sides, hell, even a few results here and there against some clubs that are above us? Have some consistent performances and mentality and tactics throughout the midweek and just week to week in general. That's what we should be looking at right now, because even with Terzic, we've just completely looked uninterested in the Bundesliga for quite a while now. So it needs to be a coach with, it doesn't need to be some next Pep Guardiola like Dortmund keep trying to find over these past decade plus here. There's been some good hires there. You had a lot of great football played with Favre, Tuchel had a lot of success too. Won us a Pokal. Terzic won us a Pokal too. But you just need a coach with some actual experience that can just get us to week against these beatable sides. And there's a few names out there that, a few of them have come and gone already, but there's a few more out there that I think could be the man for the job, at least for these next few months. It's just a matter of negotiating and seeing, I guess, who would be interested to, I don't know if it'd be like a 6-month thing and then we look elsewhere, or if this is actually going to be, just a mid-season hire for the long term. I'm not sure.
Do you think Erik ten Hag could be that guy?
I keep going back. I've thought about this a lot, actually. I keep going back and forth because, Ten Hag has shown everything that is pretty mentioned, He was at a club like United that is arguably just like us at the moment, that is just complete shambles. Yep. They're corrupt from top bottom. I'm not saying Dortmund are like that, but United are a whole nother thing. But Ten Hag had a really, really big mountain to climb and job to tackle there, and still got some good results against him. He beat Liverpool a few times. He beat Man City recently. He got United in FA Cup, for a club that a lot of other big managers at United could not do at all. I mean, Jose Mourinho said years back that his biggest accomplishment in his entire managerial career was just getting Manchester United to second place in the Premier League, and whether or not he was taking the piss, that quote, I think it was actually pretty damn serious, just given how bad United are the past decade plus. I mean, how even Amorim has been struggling to get some decent results here for United as well. So could Ten Hag, repeat any sort of the success he had at Ajax? Because he did win a handful of trophies in a row there in the Dutch league for them. It could happen. I'm terrified if he's going to be appointed, he's just going to immediately sign Anthony day one and try to do the same thing United and get all these former Ajax players in here. Could he bring sort of some stability to get results? I think he could. Yeah, I'm not sure long term. I still don't really know about that, because I think it's going to depend on what happens around him too. But it's worth having a go. There are some other names out there as well. But yeah, I saw one report, I don't know how valid this was, that him being at these last 2 home games was actually just kind of like him actually watching rather than being in talks, taking the job from Şahin. What do you think?
Yeah, I think on that, I saw like he was there kind of just as a guest to Jan Sommer, or like, are they friends, or is the thing I saw like he's just there hanging out? It would nothing with coaching. But I mean, if he's there and if all these discussions are happening or not happening, like, it's probably been discussed a little bit. And shout out to Alex Dawson in our Discord who asked, and you hit on this a little bit, but like, why will Erik ten Hag work or fail if he comes in? I want to look, I think I've said this before too, like I would love to just look at Ajax and his success there. Like, there's a reason Man United brought him in. He had such a successful run with Ajax. The stuff he did there, especially incorporating academy and everything, like that's very much what we
Europe
want
too, outside of the Dutch league too. I mean,
like
one of the best recent performances Ajax had was against Dortmund.
I mean, there was a couple different. I think like they made Champions League final a couple times. I think semifinal. They slapped us up 4-0, I believe. Yeah, like what they did not. Yeah, again, it's Europe. It's what he did with that club was great, and that's what I want to look at, and that's what I want to hold on to. I want to just say, like, Man U is kind of cursed, and hopefully, I don't care for them at all. I almost said hopefully they get better. I literally don't care about Man United at all. I want to say, like, he was almost cursed in that position. Like, that's a very hard job to tackle. My worry now is, are we kind of in that same position as a club, as a board? Like, are we going to be able to give him or bring him in and let him be successful? That's what I'm worried about. I think he could be successful at a club that is structured well. I'm not so positive in Dortmund as a club as being that club. So that's the tough thing that I kind of see us as I see Man United.
Well, what we could really use too at the moment is just simply a fresh perspective, right? Someone that's not actually internally hired, which, it's kind of crazy to think about, but if you look at these last, like, just 2 seasons alone, so much of our staff has just been either previous hires that have been with the club before. Sven Mislintat, he didn't come from Dortmund, but he has worked at Dortmund before. A lot of other internal hires or just buddies of the club. Again, Nepo ran team at the moment. Nepo ran business. Nepo ran operation. And we need some external hires, again, people with experience, with some fresh perspectives, with some success to their name, some standards that can hopefully, just fucking steady the ship at the moment too. I almost said just win us some titles, but for God's sake, get us to the top 4. We're almost in
Calm
11th
down.
place.
Calm down over there. No, I think you're right on that too. And I think having him come in, like it would be fresh. Like he'd be able to implement some things. And I think it'd be almost refreshing for the board too, right? It's not like this guy that they're necessarily putting so much on because he's one of their own necessarily. Like maybe he can take a little more control, and especially on the pitch, like I think he would be able to implement some tactics that would help and motivate these players a little more and get them in check, which is something Şahin feel like has lost complete control of. So I would not be mad at all. I think seeing him come in, I hope that things can change around him to help him be successful. Like that's my hope. If it is Erik ten Hag, I'm not going to be up in arms with him coming in. I know a lot of people write him off after Man United, but I said I like to look at his success at Ajax and kind of take stock in that. Were there any other like coaches that I know we've hit on some names here and there, but any other serious candidates? I did see a report about Sebastian Hoeneß could be available in the summer per an exit clause worth 7 to 8 million euros. Part of because all the jokes with Stuttgart, I'm like, do we want to go get the Stuttgart coach and see if this works too? I think he's a great coach. Like obviously what he's done for Stuttgart is amazing, but is that something we're actually going to do?
Who knows? I mean, I think we should have gone all in for Herzler too. Of course, only 31 years old, but he did have experience bringing St. Pauli up, and I think that's a hell of a lot more experience than Şahin and Terzic have had. So, that alone, I think that should have been a worthy of a go here. Graham Potter is now at West Ham. That was a name I threw up maybe like a month or two ago. I know Christian Streich has not come up at all. That was just simply me thinking that would be a decent hire there. Sandro Wagner is actually a name that's been tossed around reports lately, who's the assistant coach for the German national team under Nagelsmann. I don't know much about Wagner technically or just what he has done in his managerial career outside of just being Nagelsmann's assistant coach. So those are the names that come to mind for me. I think Ten Hag is probably going to be the one that stands out the most in terms of just his success, his experience, his stature. But is that like the ideal hire at the moment? I mean, I guess considering just what other names are actually seriously in the ring right now with us, but not like, if I could pick anyone, but it could, again, for the reasons I already mentioned, it could absolutely, show some success here. And at least short term, I don't know about long term, but we'll see.
All right. Slightly changing the subject a little bit from the coaches to players. Question from Chaz. Where I had it. Do you feel like Chan's captaincy should be in danger?
Chan shouldn't be anywhere near this team, period.
I feel like Chaz is just asking this as a joke. Like
the players need to be just as much under scrutiny as Şahin. I mean, Şahin, again, big problem, but not the only problem. The players need a good grilling. Some of these players do not deserve to play for this team right now. I mean, Chan, again, too. As much as he has delivered in the last however many years, he's been here 5 years now, 5+ years. A lot of shaky moments, very inconsistent player, but the past year or so, unplayable in the worst ways. He is not a fit captain for this team, despite, again, him actually going to the fans here in that Kiel game. Same with Anton and Schlotterbeck. Schlotterbeck should be, I think he is kind of just showing himself to be the captain of this team at the moment. I mean, Brandt, I thought there were moments here and there, but just his mentality with just strictly from a sporting perspective, making all these excuses in the post-game comments, not showing his face much, not taking much responsibility. I think Schlotterbeck's got to be that guy for the captain of the moment, considering too, I mean, hell, the injury that he had and to still play 2 games after that and show a lot of heart there too and get any sort of results even against Wolfsburg here in December. I think that's got to be the no-brainer decision for me at the moment in terms of just leadership on the field.
Yeah, I think we've been talking about it all season about Chan. Like, I don't understand. And I mean, obviously we've seen him even be dropped a couple times. And if there's a player you're dropping, like, I think the captaincy should immediately be stripped. And the question is, who do you give it to next? We've had conversation about Kobel and why he isn't the captain or next in line for that. And we have seen Schlotterbeck have it on a couple of occasions. And I agree. I think what you saw at Kiel and then even this Frankfurt match, like there was kind of a weird scenes where Schlotterbeck was going over to the fans and like Chan walked out. Did you see this? And like kind of yelled at him to like, nope, we got to go back to the locker room, which also I guess that can be a captain thing. If coaching and staff, it's like, everyone get in the locker room because we're about to yell at you all. Like that's a thing too. But I did appreciate Schlotterbeck trying to acknowledge the fans again. Like you said, I think he's almost trying to will it upon himself, and he's trying to just prove and be that leader and captain for the future, or maybe the very soon future, because it would be really interesting to see if a new coach comes in soon, like how that kind of leadership just shakes up on the pitch too.
Yeah. I don't have much to add outside of that. I mean, Anton has shown a little bit of that as well. He's a little too new to the club to be doing that, but he was in that same realm. He does show a lot of fight and grit and heart in that back line too. And we just need someone to be paired up with Schlotterbeck for the long term too. I think Schlotterbeck needs to be a player that we need to invest in long term, and there needs to be someone alongside him that complements him well. Hummels was, and I was talking about that with a guy at the Amsterdam Tavern for this Frankfurt game. That is why Hummels and Schlotterbeck worked so well together. They both complement each other in such great ways because they were so different. Schlotterbeck was the risk taker. He was a lot more quick. He was willing to get up a bit more. And Hummels was the complete opposite of that, where he was a lot more experienced, of course. He was very positioned well all the time. Didn't have that pace, so he sat back a bit more, and they just worked so well together. And Sule being so disappointing whenever he does play for the most part, and he's been absent for it seems like 50% of the time that he's been here anyway. He's clearly not the answer. Anton's still got a long way to go before I can get a good verdict on him, but maybe he could be that player because Schlotterbeck just needs someone in that back line, definitely next to him in the center half position, to be consistently with him so we could build some stability here in that back line. But right back at fullbacks on both sides too, for sure, but definitely in the center half position.
Yeah. Quick question from Cam. Are there any transfers from the previous window which you would consider a success at this point?
That's a great question. I'm trying to think who came in the summer now. Now I'm blanking. I've filled with so much rage.
I'll start from the top. Sarah Girassi.
I mean, probably, right? It's probably going to be a success. 7 goals. I don't imagine him having that hard of a drop-off, but just at the moment, he really needs to pick up his attitude, and I'm guaranteed he's going to continue banging in goals. So, yeah, success there, considering also the bargain we got on there for.
Maxi Bayer.
Probably the same thing.
Gross.
I think that's probably up there, second best signing, I would imagine. I don't know. Anton, he's so necessary, Anton,
Yeah, I was going to say Anton next. I will say with all of these, it's so hard to say because we've had so many issues, whether it's, a lot. Gross, not even a ton of injuries with Gross, but like he's had to shift position so many times. Like he's been a good utility player, and like I think he's been solid overall, but I don't think we've seen the best of him. And I think a lot of this comes down to like the squad and injuries and everything that's happened there. Like Anton, I think you're right. Like there is a lot of upside to Anton. Like we can't write off that he was the Stuttgart captain and he played so many matches for them. And we've just been a little unlucky, I think, with I don't want to say unlucky anymore because we've seen injuries constantly plague this team. And I think there's some questions need to be asked there too. Again, structure and overall, like how are we running as an organization? And yeah, Girassi scored. Now we're seeing some other parts of his game that we don't like and all the complaining. Maxi Bayer, I just don't think, like we've seen some moments here and there. I don't think he's always gotten the chances. I don't think we've seen the best of him yet. Like I can't say, I don't think anyone's been outright bad, but I don't think we've been able to see the best of these guys. And that can happen with changing clubs too, right? It can take time, but I think it's with the instability of the club, it's hard to even get the best out of any of our players, which we're seeing across the board, like not just the new signings coming in. I'd say maybe Gross has been the most dependable so far. And then I guess another one, maybe we're missing someone. I don't know. Jan Couto.
I was going to say
what he did in his Frankfurt match, the second half of the Frankfurt match was really good to see. I know a lot of people have kind of been ragging on him and saying we haven't seen enough or he's not good enough, but I like the second half that I saw from him.
That was me. That's me. He's the biggest question mark for me at the moment, Jan Couto. I mean, only a few months here at the club, but I am finding myself comparing him to Guerrero a lot of the time because I think they're pretty similar players where they're midfielders that are played
Guerrero. You loved him.
I don't know about loved, but those first few years for sure I did love Rafa. But just comparing the two, I don't see what Couto has on Guerrero outside of pace, to be honest with you. I mean, you watch Guerrero those 5 or 6 years initially at Dortmund and just see how well he would link up play with the likes of Royce, Sancho on any side of the pitch, really. He was really good with those 1-2 touches. He banged in a lot of goals. He was also happy to contribute to in terms of assists. Of course, a defensive liability, but Kuto's kind of the same way. And I just haven't seen Kuto really be that convincing offensively as well. You know, if you're just looking for a player that's going to be an engine on the right-hand side, whether it's defensively or offensively, I'm like, Knauf was that player, in my opinion. I mean, Knauf is obviously not a defender, but neither is Kuto, in my opinion, so far. And definitely Rafa is the same way. So I need to see more from Kuto. Yeah, Frankfurt's, I guess, is a good start, but there needs to be a lot more. And just his size, too. I mean, Aguero was obviously very small, too. But, you know, having like a right back for this team that I think lacks physicality already at the moment, when you throw Kuto in there, it gets more and more questionable. So big question mark for me. I have not personally just seen what the board has seen so far in him. Like, we're seeing reports already that the club has already activated that clause for Kuto, and the board has spoke highly of him. Probably, obviously, a manager of professionalism, but like, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, and I mean, I hope I did like what he brought in that second half of that Frankfurt match, and I'm hoping that's good signs to come. I'm usually pretty. I like to give players time, especially coming from other leagues in other countries. Like, it can take some time to settle in. I think that's where maybe it's a little more frustrating with some of these other players from the Bundesliga or who have at least played in the Bundesliga before, or if we're not seeing the best out of them. Like, I put a little more, I don't give them as much time as I would say Kuto. Like, hopefully there's some positive signs there. We'll see. And I know, man, we've been going quite a while, so this can be it's probably not a quick answer, but I just want a quick yes or no, because the latest reports I see is Dortmund lead the way for Marcus Rashford. And I'm like, how is this?
No.
Because we had the question, do you want Rashford at the club?
No.
My answer is no. I don't. How could we be leading the race for him? It seems insane to me.
I will say this.
Why would we want him?
I think a lot of the media scrutiny that Rashford gets is completely unwarranted. I mean, a few years ago, a lot of people were, from what I was seeing, and you know how much like charity he was doing, and I know like charity as like a vague thing has some question marks for sure, but he was doing a lot of really great work in his personal life, and just this random hate all of a sudden for him, just for some like, I don't know, cheeky comments he's made about the team, about leaving or whatever. You know, that's not why I don't want him at the club. I just don't want him at the club because I just don't think he's a great footballer. And we don't need another fucking hybrid wing or striker in this team. We don't. Especially one that cannot play football and one that is such an inconsistent finisher too. Please, for the love of God, no. Don't even get me started on his wages either. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's how it doesn't seem possible. Like, why would, I don't know. And if we're bringing anyone in, like, there's some other positions we can strengthen. I mean, I also constantly said we haven't, like, Malen officially at Aston Villa. It was an unused sub yesterday, as we're recording on Sunday, against Arsenal. Like, he's officially gone. I did very much say, like, I want someone else coming in to kind of fill that role. Like, I still think we need a player there. But, yeah, not Rashford. I don't think Rashford's that. So, I don't know.
You want another unmotivated player who can't play football on this team? Like, what is the club doing? Oh, you want the exact same problem you're having and even more? Marcus, right this way.
Yeah, I don't know. So, I mean, that's most of the questions we hit. I apologize if we didn't get to them. Maybe, and we might have got to them throughout the episode.
Not having a go at whoever asked that question, by the way. That just triggered me because I know, like, there was like a report, 4 or 5 days ago, that the club was steering away from the likes of that sort of signing, and now all of a sudden reports are heating back up again. It's like, why? We're such an unserious club right now.
It's so back and forth, and it could just be. I mean, this is January too. Like, it could just be like this is what gets you the most, especially with the links to Ten Hag too. Maybe that's why. Which I feel like, if Ten Hag comes, I don't think he wants Rashford either. I don't think they had a great relationship. I don't know. It's all weird, and maybe it's just media stir. But on that note too, like, I kind of bring up Rashford. One, we had the question, but then at the same time, I haven't seen much of anything else. Last week we were very much high on looked like maybe doing the loan with Renato Vega, the center back, left back from Chelsea. Haven't seen anything since. So I don't know what's happening there. It just seems like there's not a lot of movement with Dortmund, and coaching decision in the air or not. Like, I think they figured out that we need more guys in this squad, or hopefully they've realized that. And I don't know why we haven't actually moved yet. I know things can take time, but it's January 19th as we're recording, and we could have used some guys in the last 19 days.
Dortmund used to be a proactive than rather reactive club in the transfer market. I mean, that was like our thing. People around the world knew us as getting our business done and early, so we could just, be setting ourselves up in other smaller areas to make whatever part of the season more successful. But it's the complete opposite that we've seen in the last year or so.
All right. Appreciate you hanging with us. We've been, long episode. Carver's like, yeah, we'll just be in and out really quick. Just rant about the matches. No, we're going in. So coming up this week, coming up Tuesday against Bologna, this is the decider. Carver, reportedly the decider until we lose and they come back and they're like, well, there's still a chance that we automatically qualify in the Champions League, so we're going to give him his shot. But quick predictions on Bologna. Don't have to go in depth or detail, but win or loss.
I'm going to say draw.
No, and then they'll be able to be like, well, we didn't lose, so we'll let them stick around.
I think it's going to be 2-2. I don't know shit about Bologna, but I'm going to say 2.
I think we're going to lose, and I'm not saying that because is there something like, do I deep down hope we lose so that we can just move on from Şahin and get a new coach in here? I don't know. Maybe that has some influence, but I think we're going to lose just given where we're at, like how we've been performing, or not performing. I don't see good signs for us. Bologna won their last match. They tied Inter, tied Roma. No, I don't know where they're at. Again, I don't know much about Bologna either, except they're Bologna from Italy, but they'll probably beat us. And so Bologna on Tuesday, then this Saturday, home versus Werder Bremen could be a very telling match too if we don't get a result in that one.
Yeah, this whole season's been telling. It's been exposing the underlying issues of this club for the better part of a decade now.
It's been telling to us, but not to the board, apparently. We need more players. We need a different coach.
I was thinking the other day at how bad I feel sometimes coming on the show, and I'm trying to not be that much of a downer, but just like, man, whatever listeners we could just grab these past few episodes, just coming on and just being like, wow, this club sucks. See you next week. I'm trying not to regurgitate the same shit, but like, man.
Well, before
the club just keeps tripling down on the worst possible decision.
Before Leverkusen, I thought, I'm just going to be positive. Like, I want to hype up our players. I want to back them. I want to back the club. Like, I don't want to be negative anymore. And then look how we started 2025. And now I'm kind of to the point, I had the thought, like, maybe, because we're currently 10th in the Bundesliga. Like, when do we get to, there's some clubs out there who are like just solid mid-table, always mid-table. And I'm like, what do those podcasts do? What do they talk about on their show? And I'm like, they're probably just in this state of like acceptance that we're mid-table and just always hopeful, like going into every match, hopeful, right? And that's now the state I want to be in. Like, accept that we're mid-table and then just hope for the best.
No, we're not going to be in the next Schalke. It's not happening.
That's different. That's relegated. That's not that's not comfortably mid-table.
It doesn't start with relegation. It starts with, barely qualifying for Europa League. Then it's avoiding relegation barely the next season. That's not going to be us.
It's only up from here. No, we do appreciate you guys hanging out and listening, as always, week after week, even when things are very bad. Thanks to everyone who got involved in our Discord. If you want to join us there or join us on socials, reach out in any way, you can find the link in the description of this episode. And if you haven't already, check out our website, thebvbpodcast.com, because everything is there as well, including our BVB Pod merch. Been seeing a few more orders go in. We sold our first mug, and as someone who's really high up on the mugs, because I'd always drink my coffee during matches, I'm a little upset it took this long. I forget who bought it, or I'd give you a shout out, but you know who you are.
It was actually my friend Alex.
Was it?
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Alex. I appreciate it. We'll enjoy our coffee together, separate, not actually together, but buy some mugs. I'm not just saying it to push merch, but the mug's cool. I always want more mugs.
And we got enough mugs in this house.
I was about to say, at the same time, I don't have enough room in my cupboard for any more mugs. But no, if you want to get a shirt, if you want to get a mug, if you want to get some stickers to support the show, the bvbpodcast.com. We really appreciate you guys. And we will, I don't know when we'll see you next. Maybe after Şahin gets fired. But we'll talk to you later. See ya.